I thought I would show you how to make candied ginger, and this is using fresh ginger root. And I'm going to make two versions of the candied ginger. I'm making candied ginger that I'm using monkfruit sugar to make this totally sugar-free, and the other one I'm going to be using just regular white granulated sugar so that you can see the difference in texture and taste between the two. The recipe is exactly the same, the amounts are the same, the techniques are the same. It's just the sugar that you use that's either going to give you a sugar-free version or one that has sugar. Same. And all you're going to need is sugar, ginger, and water in order to make your candied ginger. And the first thing you want to do is try and get the freshest and youngest piece of ginger that you can, because it's going to be a lot more tender than something that's dried out. So that's the first thing that you want to do. It really does make a difference in the end product. Ginger on its own, if you've used it and you cut it fresh, is very fibrous. So in order to tenderize this and turn it into a candy, we want something that's already young and tender, and then we're going to boil it to kind of change the texture of the ginger. But historically it was used for digestion. Any feelings of nausea, it's very good for that. It's also recommended that you can take this for motion sickness, have a cup of the ginger tea before going out, and it really does help calm your stomach. I can definitely vouch for this. Anytime that I do have a stomach upset, a cup of green tea with a couple of slices of the ginger in it, just steeped, you drink that and your stomach feels great and the nausea does go away. And that's my own personal experience. Now, the ginger is also fantastic for boosting your immune system. It has antibacterial, antimicrobial. Ginger is also great for regulating blood sugar levels. It helps to increase circulation, because this is, in Chinese medicine, it creates a heat in your body, and when you taste it, it's peppery, so you know, you can kind of feel that heat kind of activating in your body. Ginger does come in two forms, either the fresh or the powdered, and there are different medicinal purposes that you use one or the other, and there are some differences. The powder obviously is more concentrated. It's also an excellent anti-inflammatory, and that's because of all those antioxidant, antibacterial properties that it has in it. But regardless of the health properties, this is great for this time of the year, and these little candies are fantastic just to pop in your mouth because they are so delicious. But also, if you have a little bit of a stressed throat or a dry throat, it really warms up the throat because the flavor does have that peppery flavor to it. So the first thing that we're going to do in order to create our recipe is we're going to want to wash our ginger, and then you're just going to peel it with a spoon or the back of a knife, whatever works for you. Ginger is actually, it's not a root. This is the rhizome, just like irises. They grow out of the rhizome. The roots are actually below. Ginger is the same thing. It's the rhizome, and it's actually part of the same family as turmeric and cardamom. So remember, I was saying how fibrous it is. You want to look, ginger grows like this. So these are the long fibers, the way that it's growing. And if they have little nodules, they're going to grow out through the side. So because the ginger is fibrous, the fibers run this way, you want to cut it against the grain because it's going to break up those stringy fibers. And you can just kind of break off that piece. You can see the way, you can see how all the fibers, are running lengthwise. So if we cut it across those fibers, we're shortening the fibers, which means we're going to get a more tender bite. So we're just going to cut it into thin slices. So when you cut your ginger, you want to make your pieces bite-sized, but you also want them large enough so that you can dry them on a cookie rack and not have them all fall through. If the slices were really small, they would probably just all clump up together, and we need these to dry separately in order to get the candied effect. Once it's cooked, it's going to go from this to this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to slice, and I'm going to use a cup as my measurement. It's going to give me 250 milliliter jar of candy. All you're going to do, you're going to add this to a pot. 1 cup of ginger, and you're going to cover it with about 2 cups of water. And we're going to cook that over. We're going to bring it to a boil, then we're going to reduce it to a simmer and cook it for 30 minutes. So let's go to the stove. So we're just going to put that on high, and once it comes to a boil, we're going to turn it down to medium, and we're going to let it simmer for 30 minutes. 1 minute, it's boiling. Now we turn it down to medium. So it's been 30 minutes. And we are going to turn the ginger off. Wow, smells fantastic. So there's still quite a bit of water. We're going to remove the ginger. We're going to strain the water into a separate bowl. So we're just going to strain the ginger. So this is the raw ginger, and this is the ginger that we've cooked for 30 minutes, and you can see it's translucent. So at this point, we've separated our ginger from our ginger tea, and you're going to reserve the ginger tea for some syrup. Taste the ginger and see if you like the level of spice. This will soften in our next step when we add the sugar. However, if you feel that this is too strong, you can go ahead and boil the ginger one more time with some cold water, and then remove the water and taste the ginger at that point. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. We're going to turn the heat on medium high. We're going to add a cup of sugar. We're going to add half a cup of water to start. We may need a little bit more water as this cooks down, and now stir to dissolve the sugar. So it's only been about a minute, and already it's starting to bubble. So I'm just going to turn the stove down to medium. So I've turned my stove down. It's actually lower than medium. And I just want this little bit of bubble for, so it's been 20 minutes and the liquid has reduced. It's starting to turn into a syrup, which is great. Wash this for the last 10 minutes because this is reducing quickly. There's our timer. It's been 30 minutes and we're turning this off. You can see how it's browned. It's become more candied, and we are going to reserve this delicious syrup. We're going to add it to our ginger water that we used to boil our ginger in the first step. And now we're just going to use a slotted spoon. We're just going to spread it. So just to show you what's happening to the ginger, see the spoon? The syrup, once it cools, turns into this sugar coating. And that's exactly what's happening with our ginger and turning it into candy. Very, very hot. Just let it cool for 10-15 minutes. Come back, see if it is cool enough to the touch to separate the little pieces, and then we'll toss them in some granulated sugar. This is our raw ginger. This is after our first boil, and you can start seeing it's beginning to get translucent. This is after our final boil in our syrup, and you can see how it's totally become translucent, and this is what's going to give us our candied effect. On the bottom of my plate so that it's scattered nicely, and then I'm just going to toss all the little pieces of ginger, trying to keep them separated, and just toss them all onto the sugar on my plate. And then I'm just going to come back in and just sprinkle with sugar. And now I'm just going to let these dry. Sugar will help keep them separate. It will help absorb some of that additional liquid. and it's only really been 2 hours. That sugar has crystallized around it, and as you can see, it's candied. It breaks in small pieces. So here is the syrup that's left over using the granulated sugar cane, and here is the sugar left over from the monk fruit sugar. You can see the texture is much different, and this has crystallized, and I'm going to heat this up to melt, but that is the difference between sugar cane and the monk fruit sugar syrup. So in making the ginger, you can see how easy it is. There were a couple of differences between the two, and I'm going to show you now. So this is my simple syrup that I've made with sugar cane. You can see it's clear, it's taken on the color of the ginger. And this is my simple syrup, which is made with monk fruit. And with the monk fruit, there is crystallization at the bottom. You can see there. And it's a little bit cloudier. Now, when I use it as a simple syrup, I'm just going to heat it up again to melt that crystallized monk fruit. The monk fruit sugar, which is a sugar alternative, is 0 calories, and it does not spike your blood sugar levels. But monk fruit itself is about 150 to 200 times sweeter than sugar cane. So erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol, is actually added to the monk fruit in order to create the volume of sugar that you would need in order to use it for baking. So 1 cup of sugar cane is the equivalent of 1 cup of monk fruit sugar, and the two sugars look exactly the same. They're white granulated sugar. Syrups will last in the fridge for a good month or so. Same for the candies. The candied, you should keep them in the jar, sealed, in order to keep them somewhat tender and juicy and moist. That ginger flavor. So it's great in drinks, juices that you're making yourself, obviously teas, hot drinks, cold drinks, alcoholic beverages, cocktails, salad dressings, anything that you want a bit of sweetness with the ginger. Definitely you can use these guys in it, and it's delicious. The candied ginger, I'm going to show you the difference. So this is the candied ginger that I made with the sugar cane, and this actually dried in 2 hours, and then I jarred it because it's still pliable, which I wanted it to be a little pliable, and it's got the sugar on it. So if you, depending on the humidity of your house, I have made this before, it had to dry overnight, but now it being, I guess, closer to the winter months, it dried very quickly. So just keep an eye on it. Once, check it after 2 hours. And if it's dry enough for you, pop it into your jar in order to hold in that moisture. So let's taste this ginger. This has definitely a kick. Hit you right in the back of the throat. But this is great if you do have a sore throat or a dry throat, or if you just love that little, it's almost like a numbing sensation. It is quite strong. I don't think I think this is too hot for a child. So it does have a kick. I don't think I'd be able to eat tons of them, but everything in moderation. This would be excellent if you sliced it up and used it in your baked goods. It's very, it's a deep, intense flavor of ginger, and it would impart that sweet ginger flavor in baked goods, cookies. If you threw it on a salad, threw it on top of couscous, on top of rice, if you're making an Asian meal, you could throw it on on top of the stir fry. It's really delicious and it's intense. It's not that you can't eat it, but it definitely is peppery. Now, if you wanted to make this for children, then all you would have to do after our first boil that we boiled for 30 minutes and remove the water, then you would do a second boil with fresh water for another 10 minutes, remove the water, taste the ginger. If it's still too powerful, add another cup of water or two, boil it for 10 minutes, remove the water and taste it until the ginger is mild enough for you to enjoy. I wouldn't do it any more than 3 times because then I think you're losing all the flavor of the ginger. But that is one way to make the flavor milder. But I think you're gonna love this. Now, in terms of the monk fruit sugar ginger, it's much harder. And this only dried for 2 hours. It dried very, very quickly. And I think that's because of the monk fruit sugar, the erythritol, sugar alcohols, they evaporate quicker, created a crystallized effect much faster. So this you can break, whereas the sugar, it tears. So it's pliable, you see? And the monk fruit isn't really pliable, it kind of breaks. Well, let's taste the monk fruit sugar. It's very good. Now, the monk fruit is different. You're biting into it and it's breaking up. You're chewing, you can feel a little bit of the fiber of the ginger, whereas the candied ginger made with the sugar cane, you do not detect any fiber at all. Different, you see? The monk fruit, where you can break it, and the regular sugar, where you pull it apart, but it's pliable. So yes, this is a drier version of this, but the flavors are very, very similar. And if you're not eating this as candy and using it in baked goods, this would be perfect, especially if you're making some sort of a diabetic dessert and you want to add some sweet and kind of zippy ginger flavor. This is perfect, and you can just chop it up and use it in your recipes. So that's the recipe for candied ginger. You've got 2 versions, one with sugar, one without, both delicious. A million different applications, from cookies to drinks to cocktails. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you try this and liked it, I hope you share it. Happy cooking! Enjoy!